Hugging Face started its life as a chatbot and has come a long way to become the home of machine learning. It is the most used ML platform and community with over 10,000 companies using it, over 1 lakh pre-trained models and 10,000 datasets shared on the hub for NLP, computer vision, speech, time series, biology, reinforcement learning, chemistry, and more. Not only does Hugging Face host models and datasets, but empowers companies to test them, collaborate on them, run them in production, and assess them for more ethical use. Now, in an exclusive interview with Analytics India magazine, Clement, CEO and co-founder, and Julien, co-founder and CTO at Hugging Face, speak on how they plan on creating a positive impact on the AI field by focusing on responsible AI through openly sharing models, datasets, training procedures, and evaluation metrics.
Yeah, so we started to take like a small step back. We started Hugging Face in 2016 with my co-founders Clem DeLong and Thomas Wolf. We started the company because we were super excited by machine learning, and in particular, like really excited about what natural language processing was going through at the time. So like the first, large models were coming out in NLP in 2016. There was a lot of excitement around chatbots, like conversational AI. So some really cool papers coming out from Microsoft, Facebook at the time in 2015, 2016. So yeah, we decided to start a company. We didn't know exactly what we were signing up for, but the ride has been super cool. Background is engineering. Went to an engineering school here in France, as well as in California, in the US. I was doing a little bit of machine learning even in 2006, 2007, but obviously it was like super different. Like machine learning back then was kind of like didn't have a ton of like real world applications. So I was mostly doing software engineering, more traditional, more classical software engineering. And then, I've been part of like a couple of different companies where I was like either like a co-founder or sometimes also like a team member, employee, doing all kinds of things like iOS app development, product, those kind of things. I've always been like super interested in machine learning, but I feel like I was more like day to day, I was more doing like software engineering stuff. What's really cool is I feel like there is a lot of value at the intersection of machine learning and software engineering. So like machine learning used to be this like pretty detached field from software engineering, maybe a little bit more sciencey. Like you would do some, you would create some models, you would train them on data, but sometimes the teams that were working on machine learning models, that they were not really software engineering teams. And I feel like a lot of the success that we've had on Hugging Face is to have this kind of like blended skill set of machine learning and software engineering. So the really great thing about it is that you can make sure that using good software engineering practices, you can make machine learning more accessible, simpler. You can basically, make machine learning more accessible to way more people. But back in the day, you would have to like hunt for like a code base, like really specific code base on GitHub. It would be a pain to have it to run, depending on your machine, depending on your framework, depending on your language. It was really hard to get them to work. And we've poured a lot of effort into making a set of like abstractions that would work well. At the beginning of Hugging Face, we spent a lot of time like figuring out like what kind of like abstraction we would try to build and with obviously like the community always being a really central part of what we've been doing, trying to make it easy for everyone to experiment with the new models has been kind of like, yeah, the defining value proposition of Hugging Face in the early days. Yeah, I mean, it's not unusual for like startup companies to change a little bit or even a lot. In our case, I feel like we had this idea of really building really cool machine learning stuff or tools with the help of the community from day one. It's what we wanted to do. But we had this idea of like using almost like conversational AI as kind of like a way to like kind of like almost as an opportunity to dive more into ML from the standpoint of like a precise product. But I feel like we were like super lucky to have a setup at the beginning where we did have some time, like maybe a year or two, where we could, you know, just learn more about machine learning, start releasing a few libraries as like open source, which we started to do like really early on. And yeah, kind of like have the freedom for a couple of years to explore way more of like the space of like potential stuff, and also like kind of like, yeah, have opportunities arising from what was happening in ML was like really really instrumental in what we've done. When we kind of like we realized that conversational AI was like really hard. It's like basically the hardest task of machine learning. So, and like especially our chief science officer Thomas Wolf, he was like training really cool models, or also kind of like taking pre-trained models and adapting them to do conversational AI. And we kind of like realized that the tooling needed to do that was not specific to conversational AI, but could be applied to first like all NLP tasks and even like basically all machine learning tasks. What we've seen in ML is the rise of like transfer learning. So like fine tuning, pre-training model on large amounts of data. And that actually works for all modalities, not just text. It started with, I would say it even started before text with computer vision. You know, people started doing pre-training on ImageNet, those kind of things, quite a bit before the first like large language models came out. But it really got amplified. Transfer learning got amplified a lot with NLP in, you know, 2017, 2018, with the release of BERT, GPT-2, Roberta, a couple of different models like that. OpenAI GPT, like the very first GPT as well. But now we're kind of like seeing that it works for almost every single, I mean, in some way it works for every subfield of machine learning. Audio, obviously, but, you know, even like, you know, time series in some way, transfer learning is working, is starting to work for some use cases, structured data, RL, even RL. So yeah, that's been like pretty exciting. And the tooling that we've built, so like especially like our hub, which is kind of like a, you know, platform for collaboration around models and datasets, it kind of like works for everything in machine learning. So our goal is to really focus, like double down on the hub, and make sure that it's really useful to the community. So we've seen that, you know, like for the longest time, and machine learning was really driven by, you know, engineers, scientists, And you would kind of like, for a long time, machine learning was about trying to beat some metrics to achieve the best potential metrics on data sets. And not a lot of people were actually thinking about how to build a really good data set. And so it was more like kind of like almost like an engineer, just purely engineering issue where you would try to, maximize the accuracy of your model on like specific task. But I feel like the field as a whole has matured a lot in the past few years, and kind of like concurrently with the fact that now models are used in production for like actual real world usage, which didn't really happen like a few years ago. Now, everyone in the community, I feel like, is way more aware that a bad model, like a model trained on like a really biased data set, or maybe even just like a super partial data set that doesn't reflect what's going to happen in the real world, that's not good machine learning. Good machine learning is about trying to, set up the data collection of ML, part of ML in a way where the data set is going to actually reflect the real world usage of your model. And even in some cases, I mean, like the classical example is gender bias in language models. You can actually find ways to build your data set or to pick your model, even like to pick your model architecture in a way that's going to limit the biases in the model output, and yeah, make it also more transparent. Like explainability in AI is also a really important subject. And I feel like the community as a whole has been improving a lot on the subject. There's still a lot to do, but we are trying to help in any way that we can on this kind of like subjects that are starting to be really central in ML. So that's how we kind of like the intuition that we have around like good ML. A lot of different things, like, so the hub that I was mentioning, so like kind of like can be described as basically a little bit like GitHub, but specific to machine learning. And so we are putting a lot of effort into, it's still like, still pretty simple, pretty early on this platform, but we are putting a lot of effort into building like the upcoming features, trying to make it as easy as possible for people to collaborate around machine learning. And I feel like, and also like integrate to compute more seamlessly. I feel like this is something that's going to be pretty important in making sure that people can collaborate. Like collaboration is going to just like naturally bring good and democratize good machine learning, I feel like. We also have a part of the team who's working on our own models. Like one example is we are co-organizing this project called BigScience, where a number of different institutions, academic institutions, as well as labs, are collaborating to train a really large language model. And what's really cool, so basically it's going to be a little bit like GPT-3, but the big difference is that it's multilingual and is going to be open source.
Right.
So that's like a really big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like almost like the most important part of it is the fact that there has been a huge focus put on the data set collection, like trying to make sure that by designing really deliberately the data set, we are going to improve the final model. Is going to be more reflective of like the different languages that exist in the world. Yeah, basically trying to steer away from like really like there have been companies that have trained like large models on Reddit, for instance, and we believe that it's not the right way to build a good model, which should have like a more diverse data set. And so we are putting a lot of effort collectively into collating a data set that's representative of like a lot of different languages, a lot of different ways of talking, a lot of different genders. Yeah, so it's going to be really exciting. The model is going to be trained hopefully in like a couple of months. And I feel like it's going to be super interesting for like all machine learning researchers everywhere. And obviously we'll try to make it as easy as possible for anyone in the community to actually use the model, because it's going to be a large model, but we have plans to make it like pretty easy to use still. So it's really like a project from the Big Science organization, from the community. But the way I understand it is, yeah, because the data set is like really nicely collated, I feel like it's going to be the nice, like the best data set of this size and data collection process of this size. I feel like yeah, it's going to expose like way more you know, multilingual abilities, for instance. So like for the longest time, like people have been like just like large companies, especially in the US, have trained like English only data models. Because there is all other languages on the web. Even the English trained models, they knew a little bit about other languages, but I feel like we are going to be able to have like way better results by making it like multilingual from day one and making sure that all languages are like nicely represented. So I feel like for applications such as, you know, like translate, like machine translation, cross language, text classification, those kind of things, we'll see really nice improvements, hopefully. Right. Still a little bit early, obviously, because the model is like training as we speak. But yeah, pretty exciting to see what is going to, how it's going to work in a couple of months. So I think we try to, it's kind of like my personal philosophy to try to be really deliberate about what we build. We build a ton of stuff, but our goal is mostly to build small reusable components that the whole community can build on top of. Like we like really have this kind of like platform mindset where we try to provide building blocks, but there is a ton of like opportunity and freedom for the whole community to come in and use some of the building blocks, maybe not all of them. That's totally fine, but kind of like find the building blocks that you like and that you find useful and build some products on top of it. So for instance, like Spaces is our product to like host simple machine learning apps and demos. We had this notion of like, you know, model repos as well as dataset repos, but we felt like the community would be super interested in having a way to use Hugging Face, not just for models and datasets, but something a little bit more applied, a little bit more like an application that would kind of like use models or datasets or both and do some really cool stuff on top of it. So I mean, we've been like super lucky to also collaborate and have the Gradio team join us. Gradio is a Python SDK that you can use to build like super simply, in a super simple way, apps to showcase machine learning. And I mean, they've been amazing. We are not too opinionated, so you can use other stuff than Gradio, but Gradio is like really cool thing to get started with. And yeah, Spaces has been like pretty successful. I'm like super amazed. Like every day I'm kind of like seeing new spaces and I'm like, wow, that's really cool. I hadn't, you know, anticipated that one could use our tools to do this. So I'm always surprised. Like every day I'm surprised at the ways that people, like the creativity of the community. That's really, really cool. Yeah, Spaces has been a nice project, and I feel like we can make it better on the infrastructure side for the community to keep on building cooler and cooler stuff over time. We actually just announced like a couple of weeks ago that we renamed AutoNLP to AutoTrain. The reason for that is we are in the process of like adding other modalities to it. So it made more sense to kind of like change the name. I feel like the vision for AutoTrain is for anyone who has like a data set that they want to fine-tune a model on. They can be like, you know, like pretty new to machine learning, or they can also be like machine learning experts. But in both cases, they have like a pretty easy way to get like a good model from their data, like from just their data set. In the background, we kind of like, depending on the data set, depending on the task, depending on the language for NLP tasks, we kind of like pick a number of like potential good models, and it's all automated, obviously, but we kind of like automated like picking a number of like good potential models and fine tune them on the specific data set. There is obviously some, you know, hyperparameter search, some like really cool heuristics as well, and in most cases, we are able automatically to find a really, like to train or fine tune a really, really good performing model. It takes a couple of hours usually, but you know, users have been like super happy with the results. We've even seen like, you know, Kaggle competitions where like good performing models were trained from AutoTrain. But then, like, you know, you get the model on Hugging Face at the end of the process. So, you know, you could even like use AutoTrain to train a first model and then tweak it manually, because you are able to download it. You know what the architecture is. So it's kind of like almost like an automated way to do machine learning, but it's working both for people who are new to machine learning and also for experts who want like an easy way to do some experiments without like you know, spending too much time. And yeah, we have really cool stuff happening on AutoTrain in the next coming month. So stay tuned. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, first, we are putting a lot of resources behind like our open source libraries as well. Like the Transformers library is like still growing like a lot. We have like a huge community of contributors, and we are trying to make as many contributors as possible really involved in like the coming evolution of the library. That's also the case for datasets, and that's also the case for like the other open source libraries that we have. On the hub side, I think on a high level, I kind of like mentioned that before. It's still like really early what we've built with the hub. we're kind of like built like the versioning, the storage as kind of like foundational blocks. The spaces hosting is also kind of like a foundational block. But it's still like pretty early, and we want to really build really cool stuff in the coming years. So by the way, anyone who would be interested in like working on those cool tool set and platform, please feel free to ping me or anyone on the Hugging Face team, and we would love to chat. On the hub side, I feel like on a high level, like the two big things that we are working on is collaboration, like really expanding the scope of collaboration through the hub. Maybe in the future, you will be able to, you have your model that you published, but maybe you are interested in like ways for the whole community to improve it or to suggest improvements to it. So we want to build those kind of like collaboration features in a way that's really customized for machine learning. Usually like what's been done and what works well for software engineering doesn't work that well for machine learning, because machine learning is like a bit different. So we really have this first focus point of like collaboration. And the second focus point is the seamless integration to compute. Like when you have a really good collaboration platform, I feel like the next logical step is to use this collaboration platform to, access compute in a super simple way. Like right now, you have like Google Colab, which is an amazing product to get access to like single GPU, for instance. But as soon as you want to train larger models, for instance, or if you want to do inference in a production setting and expose like your models behind an API, it's like a ton of work. You have to know about ML, but you also have to know about software engineering or infra stuff like Kubernetes, like specific hardware. You have to benchmark a bunch of different GPUs. Maybe you even want to benchmark, TPUs or other like custom accelerators, custom hardware. So it's starting to be really complex problem. And we have this vision that if we help the community by making it a little bit easier to do those kind of like compute things directly from the platform, it will be like it will have an amazing impact on machine learning, because it will unlock a lot of like different use cases. In a way, auto-train is like an example of that already, because it's kind of like a super easy way to access compute through Hugging Face. But we have like a lot of different things that we want to experiment with in the coming years in this field. So yeah, just as a short recap, the two high-level items in the coming years for the Hugging Face Hub are kind of like collaboration on one side and seamless integration to compute on the other side. No single company can solve AI or to even like do significant like long-term advances in AI by themselves. Just because like every single company is limited by its business model, its shareholders, its team. Nothing like even Google is probably like the largest company in ML. They have, I don't know, like maybe by at this point like maybe 50,000 people or maybe a little bit more working primarily on machine learning. Even them, they cannot really compete with the whole community kind of like getting together in the open and collaborating on machine learning. The reason for that is that like one single company, like for instance, like if you want to have like the best performing model for like specific language, like Spanish, if you want to do like legal text classification in Spanish, for instance, how does it align with Google, right? why would Google be the best company to work on this subject? I feel like the best way to do it is for everyone in the world who have an interest in like one specific task to be able to collaborate on it. And the way it's going to work, like the only way that it's going to work is through open source. Yeah. So kind of like I feel like we've seen like a revolution of software engineering thanks to like open source. It used to be really, really hard to collaborate on open source, like before GitHub. You know, you would send patches, like suggestions over email. Like Git was like already helpful, but it was a little bit hard to do this kind of like collaboration. And I feel like, you know, GitHub's impact on the world of software engineering has been like incredible.
Right.
But I just feel like today for machine learning, we don't have this kind of like platform yet. And that's kind of like what we are hoping to build over time. Yeah. So first, like I think like OpenAI is doing some really cool stuff. My intuition is that at some point they will be limited by the fact that it's just like one single company, one single team. And I just feel like, you know, we have like completely, even though like, you know, OpenAI is really cool company doing in AI, and Hugging Face is also like hopefully really cool company doing stuff in AI. I feel like we have like really, really divergent visions.
Right.
Where they have this vision where one super large model is going to be kind of like almost solve all of machine learning by itself without any fine tuning. And this model is going to be provided from a really small team. A really small team is going to be able to build this model and build this infrastructure, and then everyone in the world is going to access this infrastructure through an API. If you take all those different points, I feel like our vision is like the opposite on every single of these points. My vision, my like personal vision, and I feel like the Hugging Face vision is that we want to make ML accessible not just through an API, but make it accessible in the open from as many people in the world as possible. Like my dream would be like every single human is doing some machine learning and is able to build and to contribute significantly to machine learning that's beneficial to everyone else. So that's kind of like difference number one. We believe that for a lot of different, like most use cases, you don't want like a super large model. You want like a way smaller model that's actually fine-tuned on your specific use case for your specific use case. And like if you look at the actual, you know, production usage of machine learning, a lot of companies are already using machine learning in production. Almost none of them are using like a really, really large language model, not fine-tuned to their specific use case. People in production, they use models that are fine-tuned to specific use cases. So I feel like the production usage is like a little bit different as well. And yeah, that's kind of like yeah, in a nutshell, why I think that yeah, open source is like really the key to unlocking like the future of machine learning. So the DALLE Mini is like a community project led by Boris Daima and Suraj Patil, who's like a Hugging Face team member. I think that I mean they should probably like talk about what they are building, but they are I don't want to like scoop them out or anything, but they are currently working on like a larger replication of DALL-E that's going to be like way closer to like the initial results of DALL-E. So I think that's going to be really cool to experiment with. On your specific question of like the risks, I think our approach is you're not going to really multiply the risks by making ML accessible to more people. On the contrary, you are going to be able to mitigate the risks better because bad actors, they already have access to those models. They already have the means to like train really, really large models or to acquire them in some ways. So I feel like this kind of like this whole argument is like almost like a theoretical argument, but I feel like, yeah, I feel like people working on, you know, bias mitigation, risk protection, those kind of things, they are going to be able to do way more meaningful work if they have access to some of those models. So in a way, I feel like, you know, kind of like the open access by default is by itself a good policy. But again, I think it's kind of like a little bit theoretical because we don't have that many data points for now. So I mean, it's really hard to be, you know, scientific about it. At Hugging Face, we are starting to have like a really, really cool policy team that's going to be able in the coming years to work a little bit more in depth on those kind of like subjects. But so I guess we'll learn things by experimenting in the coming years. But the goal for us is to learn as a community, not just learn by ourselves, but yeah, almost be kind of like a, you know, like a proxy for like what the community as a whole is learning on those subjects. So we didn't, as a company, we didn't really need to raise a new round of funding because we still had like most of like the previous round in the bank. We realized that we had been like super lucky with the investors that we had. Like our lead investors are this VC firm called Lux, based in the US, as well as Addition, who is also based in the US. We've been super lucky to have them as investors because they really support this kind of like long-term vision that if you build something, like if you build an open platform that's useful for the machine learning community, you will be able at some point to build a big business around it in a way that's compatible with like the philosophy of like building something that's like open and accessible to the largest possible community. So for the past few years, we've worked with those two investors and we've been really happy. We felt like it would be amazing to be able to raise more money from the same investors. So we mostly so we announced today that we raised a Series C of $100 million US at a valuation of $2 billion. This new round of funding is mostly led by our existing investors, so Lux Capital and Addition. We do have two new funds coming in, who are Sequoia and Coatu Ventures. They're kind of like signing slightly smaller participations, but we are like super excited to have them on board as well. What's really cool is that we have like we are kind of like not like a crazy company in terms of like spending. The team is like still reasonably small. We don't plan on like growing the team, 10x or even 5x. We want to keep building a team that's diverse and really impactful. That's the two goals. But we now do have like the kind of like freedom to build like something for the long term. We don't have, to chase revenue, to optimize revenue for the coming year. For instance, we do have some, really promising monetization streams. We have really cool stuff happening on that front as well, but we don't have like, a short-term goal of like, optimizing for monetization. So what's really cool is that with this new round of funding, we have the freedom, to build the really cool machine learning platform for the coming, 5 or 10 years.
Right.
I feel like the long-term vision is that in 5 years, machine learning is going to be really, really different from what it is now. I feel like I almost feel like, in 5 years, machine learning is going to be as big, maybe even bigger than software engineering today. Because I feel like, most software engineers will also do some machine learning in 5 years. And I even feel like if we do a good job about this, machine learning in 5 years will be accessible to people who are not doing software engineering today. So, basically anyone would be able to build their intuition of like how machine learning is working. Because kind of like conceptually machine learning is quite simple in a way. That's kind of like almost ironic, but because machine learning was so hard, but in a conceptual way, it's not that complicated. You kind of like train a model to approximate a function on like a specific input domain and to generate output from this input on like specific input domain. If we can, make tools that make it like super easy for anyone to do machine learning, I feel like machine learning is going to be bigger than software engineering in 5 years. So we have this long-term view, this long-term vision. In the meantime, we want to build stuff that's like actually super useful to the machine learning community. And, like the ride in itself is like super exciting. Kind of like being lucky enough to work on those subjects with like a really, really large community has been amazing. So we want to really, we're excited to continue doing that.